The moon is gone, and the night is still so dark. I'm a little bit afraid of tomorrow. Yep, I am done with the Xeno saga. That means that I am entirely caught up on the Xeno series, which will last for all of about 3 weeks, because Future Connected is coming out, so, you know. Anyway, this week's video is on Xenogears, not the series I just finished, or the one with the new game coming soon, because, well, the second one is leaking already, so I don't even want to touch that and risk getting spoiled by comments, and I wasn't expecting to finish the first one this week, so I didn't have a Xeno Saga video idea ready, so we're doing a Gears one. This time we're going to be talking about the Omnigears. This will involve spoilers for Xenogears and Xenogears alone, but if you know nothing about Xenogears, I would not recommend starting with this, even if you don't care about spoilers, because this is going to get really, really crunchy with the lore in a bit, so just a bit of a word of warning here. There is technically some Xenosaga relevance too, because the Omnigears are the Xenogears equivalent of the ES units, and there is one interesting parallel I want to talk about a little bit later, but it's not too major. First off though, we have to talk about the name itself, because Omnigear is already a pretty decipherable term, but we have other languages to think about, because in the original Japanese version, the term used is Gearbara. The bara part is not what you're probably thinking, but it is instead a Hebrew word that relates to creation. The full term for normal gears is actually Gear Asa. I might be pronouncing the Hebrew completely wrong, I wouldn't be surprised. This is another Hebrew word with a very similar meaning. They're similar, but they don't mean the same thing. And this difference is very important, especially when you view it through the context of both words showing up in the Hebrew version of Genesis. Bara is used for supernatural creation out of nothing, which only God can do, while Asa is used for making things from other things, which both God and humans are capable of. These words and their use is actually pretty important in disagreements on whether or not the Bible allows for the whole billions of years between the beginning of the universe and now, and there's a big thing about this apparently when it comes to creationism and all that argument. That's beyond my expertise. I don't really want to go down that direction, and it's not in the scope of the video anyway. Regardless, Bara is a word more associated with God, and the Omnigears are referred to as God Gears, being more strongly connected with both Deus and the Zohar than the normal gears, so this does make sense. There's also the idea that the Omnigears are the true God gears, while the normal ones were just made as facsimiles of it, sort of like humans trying to replicate what God has created, but not being able to do as well because obvious reasons. In the English version, the Omni prefix instead comes from Latin and stands for something like everything or all-encompassing, which does make sense with the God thing, but does not contain the same religious connotations. It is also possible that the reason the Bara Asa dynamic was dropped was because when written in katakana, Asa is spelled the exact same as Arthur, so the translators might have just missed that both types of gear had a meaningful name and just translated the one they did pick up on into something else that meant relatively the same thing, but was understandable to a wider audience, which I think Omnigear gets the point across a bit more than having to look up what a Hebrew word means. So that does make sense. It's effective localization in terms of more people being able to understand it, even though even Japanese, I don't know how many people would get the Hebrew thing, but it's technically incorrect because it misses the fact that normal gears have their own special name too to distinguish them. The names of Omnigears also have the prefix El added to them. This is also from Hebrew and relates to God, either meaning God generically or referring specifically to the biblical God or other deities in other religions depending on the context and language, because variations of this name are used in other languages connected to Hebrew. It is also the source of the El in Ellie's name, as well as the El in Kal-El, both of which make sense. The first one because Xenogears will be Xenogears, and the second one because Superman's original creators were Jewish. The prefix is only sometimes used in-game, usually in reference to gears we see get upgraded into Omni mode in order to distinguish the god form from the base form, but it is technically there for all of them with the possible exception of Graf's Omnigear. It's just occasionally used in-game and occasionally not used in-game, but various supplemental material does show that it's there for all of them except maybe Graf's. With the nomenclature out of the way, what exactly are the Omnigears? Simply put, they are gears that have been fused with one of the 12 Anima relics and evolved into a more powerful state. Unlike in Xenosaga, where the vessels of Anima are pretty well explained, at least in Episode 3's database, it's never really clear what the relics actually are. We know that the components needed to awaken Deus were separated into a quote-unquote male Animus and a quote-unquote female Anima component, with 12 pieces of each. The 12 Animus components were the original humans, the members of the Gazelle Ministry, and their goal in the game is to reunite with their Anima half and return to Deus. By the time Xenogears starts, however, 4 of them have been killed outright, and the remaining 8 are only still alive as minds upload to a computer without their original bodies, so they are instead trying to hijack the bodies of humans who have aligned with the Anima relics, because humanity as a whole is technically the Animus, as shown in the fact that humans of a certain genetic quality were still needed for the resurrection of Deus, even if Krellion's nanomachines somehow rendered both the actual bodies of the Ministry and apparently one of the Anima relics completely unnecessary. Perfect Works finally sheds a bit of light on what beyond Deus Awakening keys the relics actually are, describing them as pseudo-Zohars that were designed to emulate the original Zohar modifier, but were unable to do so successfully until humans started being born with a specific factor that allowed them to control them. Basically, they're a combination of the Zohar emulators and the Vessels of Anima from Xenosaga, or rather, Xenosaga split the concept of the Anima relics into 2 separate things that have 2 separate roles in the story. All of humanity is Animus, so special humans are able to resonate with the Anima relics and draw out their full power, bonding with them and unlocking a lot of special abilities and stuff. From what we can see, a relic that's not currently bonded with a gear is capable of choosing its host. Presumably, if someone with a high affinity to that relic goes near it, it will do so, and an Omnigear will not lose its relic automatically when its pilot dies. In fact, we never really see a relic getting removed from a gear other than by force, so it might not even be possible to do that. When a gear is upgraded, it takes on a much more techno-organic appearance, usually involving wings, and grows in power immensely. While this is obviously true in-game, it seems like whatever traditional gear, weaponry, and frame are equipped do still affect the Omnigear's output and battle capabilities in-universe. We know this is true for Xenogears, but not the Omnigears. I'm just assuming that's the case. When it comes to gameplay, the actual upgrade is more or less cosmetic, with only Andvari directly improving upon the innate statistics of its predecessor, although some Omnigears do come with better gear than you're capable of getting at this point in time, so they seem a little bit overpowered. In-universe, though, the characters get loads stronger once they obtain and master their Omnigears. The interface of the gear is also changed to rely on telepathic inputs instead of physical stick-based controls. The strength of one's alignment with the relic determines how well these controls work and how much power you are able to get out of your machine. Someone who isn't well aligned with the relic couldn't move the gear at all, and it seems like affinity for a given relic runs in the family, since Bart is able to use his ancestor Roni's gear Andvari, and his cousin Margie is also capable of moving it to some degree when under duress. Ellie can use Sophia's Omnigear perfectly, but she's a straight-up reincarnation, so that doesn't really count. Ramses uses 2 different gears with 2 different relics because he's an artificial contact and can align with all of them, so presumably Faye, being the actual contact, would be able to align with all of them too, but we never see present Faye align with any of them, and throughout all of his incarnations he only uses 1. The Anima relics were named after the first 12 children of the biblical Jacob, and while normally I would go in birth order explaining which gears they're assigned to, that would actually get messy because of the way the birth order is different from the order of how they're divided up amongst characters, so I'm just going to go in the order they're talked about in Perfect Works. Dan, Joseph, and Gad are described as being aligned with, quote, some surface dweller, unquote, in reference to the 3 Omnigears the party members who aren't from Solaris get. It is explicitly mentioned at a point in Disc 1, when Andvari is the only Omnigear in the party, that the Dan relic is currently with them, so we know as a fact that Dan is aligned with that. El Andvari is named after a dwarf from Norse mythology, fitting with being connected to the Fatima royal family, which also possesses the ship the Yggdrasil, and was originally aligned with its relic over 500 years ago during the Shavat Solaris War. There, it was piloted by Bart's ancestor and the first king of Ave, Roni Fatima. After the war, it was sealed in Fort Jasper, which itself was sealed in Nisan, and was only able to be opened by the Fatima Jasper, starting a legend that a mysterious giant, the God Gear, the Omnigear, could be opened using the Fatima Jasper if ever Ave or Nisan was in peril. Bart then retrieves it while liberating Nisan from Shakan's forces, while also reopening Fort Jasper, and pilots this gear until Deus is revived. We don't know which relic goes with which gear, but Rico's gear Steer and Billy's gear Renmazuo both obtain Anima relics, upgrading them to Omnigear status. Both relics are found in Ziboim-era ruins after the party goes looking for relics to improve their own strength and get them out of the villain's hands. This is also the only time we can see a relic align with the gear. It seems that when the pilot approaches the relic, it will make them hear a voice in their head, either something programmed into the relic itself or even the voice of the wave existence itself, and it will show a vision of their gear in its newly upgraded state before it disappears and goes to the gear. The relics themselves are also shown to resemble small Zohars. Steer is German for bull, and Ramazuo is Chinese for the constellation Sagittarius. There is a very, very, very small zodiac theming going with Omnigears, and by that I mean only 2 of them have it. Both Omnigears are then piloted until their relics are absorbed by Deus. Remember, Andvari is an entirely separate frame from Bart's original gear Brigadier. It is implied that pre-alignment, Andvari was a similar model, but they are 2 separate mechs. The Asher relic is fused with Citan's Omnigear El Fenrir, which was left in Solaris when he left the country, until he picks it up later for Disc 2. Fenrir is of course one name for the giant wolf from Norse mythology, who has an important role to play in the Battle of Ragnarok. This is also a separate frame from his normal gear Heimdall, which is a similar model to Brigadier. Citan pilots it from when he first becomes playable in Disc 2 to when its relic is absorbed by Deus. Now that we've gone through all the party member Omnigears, let's just talk about the Deus thing and how Xenogears the gear fits in. Deus absorbs the 4 Anima relics with the party in order to awaken when he's encountered in the Merkava, as well as potentially 7 of the 8 others, leaving all of the party's Omnigears immobile. When going to fight Id in the Zohar cave, you can bring any 3 party members besides Faye and Ellie, and if you bring any of the 4 characters who had an Omnigear, they will use their original gear. Billy and Rico will use the original, unupgraded versions of their gears, while Citan and Bart will switch completely back to their original frames, using Heimdall and Brigadier, not the relicless versions of Fenrir and Andvari. Heimdall will even use a sword for the only time in the game, because I guess at that point, you got Fenrir. So yeah. When Faye returns to the party and everyone is prepared to go after Deus for the final battle, the rest of the group gets brand new gears, and everyone who's had an Omnigear gets a new one that looks like that form instead of the original. Some online resources imply that it was the power of Xenogears itself that was able to restore them to fully functional, full-powered Omnigear status, but that's not actually true. It was the 3 sages who took data from how Xenogears mutated and how it operates at that level of power without a relic in order to design a new type of normal gear with the power and appearance of an Omnigear and with nanomachine defeating tech installed, not Xenogears itself restoring the functions. Keep in mind, these new Omnigears, and presumably Maria and Emeralda's gears were also upgraded to Omni status because they never got relics, these gears still used slave generators, unlike Xenogears, so they still don't work without the Zohar. The Zebulun relic was one of the two aligned with Ramses. This one was aligned with his original gear Wyvern to produce the Omnigear El Vendetta, which pretty obviously was just kind of named after his grudge against Fae. There is no symbolism, he's just really mad. It shows up to destroy Veltal 1 at the end of the first disc, but then is pretty much immediately used as fodder to show how stronger Veltal 2 is than the original form. It shows up once again in disc 2 when he attacks Nisan, but after that Ramses is using a different Omnigear, so its relic was probably taken and given to Deus. The Judah relic was aligned with Krelian 500 years ago. This gear is seen in the main game not piloted by him, but rather as Ramses' second Omnigear. The name of this gear is spelt Amphyshysvena, which is pretty obviously a mistranslation of Amphisbaena, which is a mythological serpent creature that I think was used as a scientific name of some real genus of snakes or something, just to make things more confusing. After it's beaten in Merkaba, its relic is presumably also given to Deus. The Dina relic was aligned 500 years ago to Sophia's Omnigear. The name is spelled El Regers in-game, but this is also fairly obviously a bad translation of El Regulus, which references the star, bright star in the constellation Leo. There's your one other zodiac reference, I guess. It was used by Sophia in the Shivat Solaris War, and the country of Shivat held on to it after her death. Ever since the party first gets there, it's shown that Ellie has an extremely high affinity with this gear, and she is offered use of it, but keeps declining until she heads to rescue the party once they get crucified. She does successfully beat the two opponents Krelian 6 on her, but overexerts herself, collapses, and is captured. We never see the gear again unless you unlock it in the fighting game minigame, but presumably the relic was given to Deus. 4 relics, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Issachar, were aligned with the 4 dead Gazelle ministers 500 years ago. Just based on numbers, one of these has to have been aligned with Myong's Opiomorph at some point after that, unless there is a 13th relic out there, which wouldn't make much sense since that would mean Animus and Anima are unbalanced. If there is a 13th relic, it's presumably called Benjamin, but yeah, it's probably one of those 4. Due to Myong being Myong, it is also possible that she's capable of aligning with all the relics because she's one of those really big important people. Maybe Ellie can too, since she's the anti-type, but just reacted strongly to the one her previous incarnation actually used. So not only is it just not known which relic Myong uses, but it also possibly doesn't matter at all. The last gear, Naphtali, was aligned with Lacan 500 years ago for the Shivat Solaris War, and is still used by Graf in the present storyline. This gear is referred to as Alpha Veltal in one fight and True Veltal in the other fight in the English version, but in both, it is known as OR or Original Veltal in Japanese. This is the only designation we hear it with, so while it might be possible that it is also known as El Veltal, we only hear it as OR, which is only to separate it from the Veltal Fae uses. Veltal means cosmos in German, not kosmos, cosmos, as in universe, not Greek for order, because it's German. This is Lacan's Omnigear, and the Veltal Fae uses was modeled after it. Fei Fong Wang never gets his own Omnigear. The Veltal he starts out with was custom made for him using Solaris parts and data from the OR Veltal. While it has a similar basis to a relicless version of it and looks a lot like it, for the most part it is just a finely tuned, normal gear made with extremely high-end parts and the ability to transform to better let id use his full powers when he comes out. Perfect Works even confirms that Veltal id has efficiency problems that OR Veltal does not. It's still weaker than an Omnigear when normal Fae pilots it. It is destroyed by El Vendetta, and then rebuilt into Veltal 2 by Torah Melchior for the second disc. Veltal 2 is extremely powerful, but this is the result of several things, none of which are alignment with an Anima relic. Data from Andvari was apparently used in its design. Torah accidentally discovered a way to increase its energy output, and was able to rebuild it, stronger and more bulky. It also has access to System Id, which allows Faye to tap into the same power as Veltal Id without transforming. It is capable of fighting Omnigears and winning on its own, but Veltal 2 is still a normal gear. Even when it's upgraded to Xenogears, it gets a power boost, it gets an appearance change, it looks a bit more organic I guess, but this is a result of Faye coming into contact with the wave existence in the Zohar, and not an Anima relic. Xenogears is its own type of thing, completely different from any other gear, and is not an Omnigear at all. The Naphtali relic stays with Graf and OR Veltal until his death, at which point it's presumably absorbed by Deus, since he was connected to the Zohar when he died. It is possible that we do get to see what this gear looks like without the relic, since it changes appearance to a weaker looking form whenever Khan or Wiseman and Graf switch control, which would most likely make Khan's form of the gear the original Veltal, since I'm guessing Lacan had it before he aligned it with the relic. And that's the end of the video, but, you know, there's concept art for an L Crescens and an L Siebzen, which means that were Disc 2 to get the full budget treatment, we would have had everyone except Faye and Choo Choo get Omnigears. But, like, man, it sucks to be a female character in this game. Like, Ellie gets an Omnigear and then never gets to use it playably because she gets kidnapped for the rest of the game. And the other two female characters are the two characters who had their Omnigears cut. So, we would have gotten to see 2 of the 4 Gazelle Ministry random relics, I guess, if that had happened. But, like, man, that sucks. You know what would have been nice? If, like, the sages were like, haha, yes, we have found a way to upgrade your gears back into the power they had as Omnigears, but we had to make them look like Omnigears to do it. So, not only did everyone who had an Omnigear get a brand new version of their Omnigear that was as powerful as the old one without a relic, but, like, Maria and M also got things that looked like Omnigears. Just, like, give them something. Faye doesn't need it, he has the most powerful gear of all time, and Choo Choo doesn't use a gear at all, so whatever. Give the other 2 a bone, please. Also, it's really weird after playing Xenosaga to see the Anima relic alignments and just be like, wow, that's weird. None of these make sense with the Xenosaga characters. Like, you'd expect Satan to have Reuben. You'd expect, I guess, like, Ramses to have either Margulis or Pelagris, and he doesn't. Judah does sort of make sense, I guess, but, like, Ramses has one of the gears that the heroes have access to in Xenosaga. Dina is the only one that really makes sense. Like, Asher and Satan, no, Asher should go to Bart or Billy. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, that's all I got, and until next time, this is Luxon signing off.